Welcome, everyone, to the Now at Night podcast, here where we're exploring kind of the intersection between technology and innovation and bringing all those two together in our personal experiences and stories. With me here is my co host, Nasser. How are we doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Chris. How are you?
I am doing very well, taking some time off, getting some beach time in. So, definitely
Oh,
enjoying my view here versus looking at a laptop or a inbox. So, enjoying
now
my
you're making
time.
me
But yeah.
jealous.
Yeah, very much looking forward to this episode, though. I know we've got a very, very special guest here today, but wanted to, have some time for us to kind of reflect on how far we've been going. We've now finally crossed the threshold of 10 episodes now beyond. So I'm really looking forward to that. How are things going with you, Nasser, in terms of, kind of your personal growth as you've been looking at this podcast and seeing all the different hosts that we've had before we introduced our next guest?
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly can't even be thankful enough for the opportunity of meeting all of these individuals that have honestly blessed us by being guests on our podcast.
Yeah.
Really helped widen my horizons on how different we all are, yet how much we have in common, which is fantastic. Um, Understanding that we all come from different backgrounds, yet we're all serving the same purpose of being good human beings and having the common passion of loving technology. So, yeah, every episode I feel like I have
Yeah.
to honestly simmer on it for maybe a month or so just to apply the lessons that I've learned from our fantastic guests. How about you? What's your experience been so far?
Yeah, I would say, likewise, right? I think I really relate to everything you said up to this point, as well as just all the experiences we've learned, all the stories that we've shared with these different hosts. I think I'm also learning that there's so much more we have in common, but also that there are a lot of other places that I haven't even explored, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's just, it kind of is a true testament to, how we navigate this world and how we really use our skill sets in many different avenues and extensions of life, as well as in professional, career. So I think with that, I'd love to go ahead and just introduce our next host. And I think this is going to be a really exciting episode. Someone who's been very well versed in not just technology, but professional growth as well, both in the personal space by giving back to their community, as well as really helping people understand this challenge between technology and how we can help secure the world, one person at a time. So, with that, I want to go ahead and introduce someone who has been very well versed in the community of not only ServiceNow, but someone who's been inducted in the Hall of Fame for our security researcher program, ServiceNow MVP.
Nice.
Expert across many different certifications. I believe a former nurse. We'll get to that. I want to make sure my facts are correct. And also just an architect of many technologies and running his own business. So, with that, Nick Sessa, I'd like to go ahead and just introduce you and just to get a little bit about you and who you are. Nick Sessa, everyone, I'll pass the microphone over.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. So Nick Sessa here. I currently am the founder and principal for Entry Labs. We focus on security assessments for ServiceNow instances, penetration testing, fractional security engineering, and custom apps. But I'm super excited to be here. So yeah, let's get into it.
Fantastic. So I want to get the facts straight. Are
Yep.
you a nurse?
Yes. So in 2011, I started my career out as a nurse. I actually started working at a jail. So that was super fun, and that was my first
Wow.
exposure. Like, yeah, if you're a security nerd too, that was like my first exposure to defense in depth, right? Because while it wasn't like a logical defense in depth, like you think about when you're talking about securing applications and networks, it's physical. And then I learned like the different levels of controls that are in place where if other ones fail, other ones pick up the slack. And that was kind of my first like, wow, this is pretty cool. And I didn't realize how complex security is even at the physical level.
Nice.
So that's where I started out as a nurse. I found that I was pretty nerdy, so I started focusing on programming as a hobby,
Nice.
and I started my bachelor's in data management and data science. And I'm not sure if you want me to go through the whole background, but that's kind
Oh,
of
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
where. Oh, sure, yeah. So
Yeah, so that's the fascinating part is knowing how someone finds their passion in tech and kind of switching gears from whatever they were doing, in your case, nursing, and kind of adapting that into technology.
yes, definitely. And that was the cool part because like when I was a nurse, I'd always be volunteering, like, hey, let me help fix this computer thing or like one-off things. And I found like I could probably make a career out of this. So yeah, started focusing on my bachelor's, really got into programming. In order for me to break into tech, my first role was an Epic analyst, which was like a medical record system.
Nice.
And that was kind of because I was able to say, oh, I have a clinical background and I'm a nerd, so I feel like I'm a good fit because I could be kind of a bridge between your clinicians and your tech.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
so that was how I got my foot in the door. And then I became a team lead. And then ServiceNow got on my radar because a friend of mine at the same hospital system was a ServiceNow developer.
Nice.
And he showed me, he was like, hey, watch me build an app really quick. Watch how quick I can do it. And in my head, I'm working on my bachelor's degree, right? So I'm like, okay, he's gonna have to make SQL tables and make a front end and all this other stuff. And he spun up Studio and he built like a literally, and I'm not, this isn't a paid advertisement. He literally built like an enterprise grade app in like 30 minutes. And I was like, this is the future. This is
Oh, wow.
insane.
Nice.
So yeah,
You heard it here
that
first,
was,
folks.
yeah. From there, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I could do a career in this because I think this is kind of the future, and it's grown so much since then. But that was kind of my first exposure to ServiceNow, and when I really got, I wanted to pivot. That's when I realized I wanted to pivot. So I picked up a ServiceNow developer role. I started self-studying, got the CAD, CSA. I picked up a job at that same hospital system as a ServiceNow developer.
Nice.
And then from there, yeah, I was just all in on ServiceNow. I was building apps. I bounced around between some partners after that, and I started realizing there to niche down even further into security because I started realizing like, oh, I really like security. I started picking up security research as a hobby. I was doing bug bounties, going to DEF CON. I really found that I love that attacker mindset. And then it really helps when you're also designing defenses, whether that be for like ServiceNow platform security or coding an app or even SecOps, architecting SecOps for an implementation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll pause there because I don't want to be super long-winded. that was kind of how I got into ServiceNow specifically.
Nice. And you mentioned that you also were interested in security. So was it kind of more of like a parallel lines where you were kind of working on getting expertise in ServiceNow and security at the same time? Or was it just two passions that happened to intersect at a certain point?
I would say it was two passions that started to intersect because while I was a ServiceNow developer and while I was at a partner doing ServiceNow work, I was kind of just self-learning ethical hacking, right? I was learning. I've always been interested in that space, but I was really once I realized you can do it and actually one, be paid for it, and two, it's completely legal if you have the permission through like a bug bounty program.
Yeah.
I just went all in on that as a hobby. So
nice.
So from there, while I was working as a partner, I was self-learning, got my CEH and my GPen. And then I found there was an intersection at some point because while at a partner, there was a CVE at one point where some customers had some questions about their ServiceNow instance. They were like, hey, are we secure? And I found that there wasn't a lot of expertise in that area on the partner side at all the partners that I was talking to. And they were like, I mean, we could send them the KB, but that's all we have. So I built like a lab and I was like, here, this is the settings you have and this is how it's affected. And then from there, that was when my eyes opened that I can do both, right? That was like the intersection. That moment was the intersection for me. And I was like, there's a need for this. And there's like a gap because the platform's gotten so complex. You really need to focus. There's a shared responsibility model, right? That's where the customer is also responsible for configuring their security, and it's gotten really complex. And I think there's a growing need, and I think there's a rise for like what I call like a fractional security engineer, where you may not need an FTE as a security engineer, especially if you're smaller, but you really need someone that can focus on that area and wear the ServiceNow hat and the security hat, and ideally the attacker hat too.
So can you explain to our listeners what exactly does being a certified ethical hacker means and how is this kind of like a legal loophole into hacking?
Definitely. So so you don't need a certification to participate necessarily, but it gives you a good foundation, right? So like I said, the CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker, the GPEN, which was my favorite cert. That's the GIAC, which is SANS courses, if you've heard of them. They're a security training company. That was their penetration testing offering, and that gave me a really good foundation of what like the basics of hacking. And then it's all self-learning from there for me. It was just a lot of like doing pen tester lab, hack the box. Those are all ways you could self-learn and self-teach yourself. But what it is basically for a bug bounty program, you could sign up on a platform like HackerOne or BugCrowd, and you can join these programs where companies will basically put their program out there and they'll say, hey, we give you permission to hack on these specific assets that are in scope that we define very specifically. And then here's the things you can do. Here's the things you can't do. And as long as you stay within the can do and you follow the rules, you have permission to do this. And there's a legal exclusion that we're calling out here, saying like you're not going to be held legally responsible for this. Like obviously you don't DDoS and flip over their whole network, but you within reason, and as long as you follow the rules, you can do that. And to me, like it wasn't even about the money at first. I just loved doing it. Like it was like a rush finding these things, and it was really fun. And being able to participate in ServiceNow's vulnerability disclosure program was really exciting, because then I was able to take my architecture knowledge of ServiceNow and also apply my ethical hacking hat, and it's just been really, really fun. It's been, and I think it's also strengthened the platform, because like some of the things that I've submitted have been patched through various security patches, and overall it's a win-win, right? Because ServiceNow and anyone else who has a vulnerability disclosure program or a bug bounty program, as long as they're defining the scope they're comfortable with, and then they're also getting experts and even people new to the field that are basically attempting to exploit the things, and then they're reporting it. They're going through a responsible disclosure process before a bad actor finds it and exploits it, and it gets patched that way. Sorry.
Fascinating.
Yeah, this is really, really fantastic. And I think for our listeners, I would love to have a follow-up session with you as well, Nick, on just more, ethical hacking practices and, common security things we should know to protect ourselves. One question I have for you as well, you mentioned, a number of different kind of certifications that you've got around your security belt. We have a lot of listeners that always ask us, what's a good starting point if I want to get into maybe ethical hacking, either from the offense or defense side? Is there a specific course, or is that the one you mentioned that you recommend as a good starting point to start getting into that? Or do you have kind of a mind map that you could share with our listeners in terms of how you could start to invoke those right actions and start building your portfolio? Love to hear your thoughts on how you built that foundation and what you'd recommend in terms of like a first best step for those looking into that industry.
Definitely. The first major thing is just start with a really basic understanding of technology. Like if you're brand new, and you don't have any IT experience, but hacking's interesting to you, you absolutely can learn it. But I think it's really important to just have a basic understanding of technology. And if people learn differently. Some people like certifications because it gives you a structured way of learning, and you have certain objectives you need to hit. So A+ is a really good one. The CompTIA A+ is a really good one just to get a foundational understanding of technology, right? And then beyond that, I would say learn some Python, take a basic Python course. And then it depends on your budget from there, because if your company's paying for it, like I said, SANS has really great courses. I wouldn't particularly recommend the CEH, to be honest. I would say the SANS GPEN was great, but it's really expensive. Like it's like $7,000 to $10,000. That's way out of range for most people that are self-learning. I was lucky enough to have my company sponsored at the time, but there is a company called TCM Security, and they have TCM Academy, and they have really affordable, awesome courses. And you could do intro to Python through them. They'll take you through the very basics of ethical hacking, and then you can go out from there. They have advanced courses too on web application hacking, which would be applicable to things like if you were doing the vulnerability disclosure program for something like ServiceNow or Workday or any other company that has a vulnerability disclosure program. And then beyond that, they have really advanced courses. Like they have some that are in the weeds with privilege escalation and network security and just specific tools. And then beyond that, from there, they even have certifications, I believe, that are really affordable compared to a lot of the mainline security ones. So TCM for security courses specifically that are affordable, I always back TCM Security. I love their courses. And for books, if you're a book reader and like to learn that way, I would say anything from No Starch Press is usually really solid.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make sure to link these in the description for our listeners so they can quickly
Great call.
navigate them. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, Nick, I see that you've taken the route of going from working for organizations to starting your own business. Can you walk us through how that journey was and what got you to wanting to do that?
Definitely. Yeah, so I'll pick up kind of where I left off with working for partners. So I had that light bulb moment where I saw there was an intersection and I can do both things I like, right? I could do security and I can do ServiceNow. And then I really started to niche down and look for positions that had that focus. So I started taking positions like ServiceNow lead security engineer and ServiceNow security workflows architect. So then I was gaining skills in both of those. And again, at those customer sites, I'm seeing like there really is a need for the skill set. And those were large customers. So some large customers can afford to have an FTE, but there's a lot of small customers that they're not going to have an FTE that's a security person. So after seeing that need and then hearing, oh, there's people who need pen test, there's people who need security assessments, Vault implementation. There's not many partners that specialize in Vault. I saw the opportunity and I jumped on it. So I started Entry Labs. I'm full time now with the company, and it's been going great. Our main offerings, like I was saying earlier, are instant security assessments. So that's us checking your security posture, because that shared responsibility model, right? That's checking like what configurations and customizations have you added that may be opening you up to risk that you don't know about. Pen tests. So some highly regulated environments, you need pen tests of things that store PHI, PII. So there's not any partners that I know of that specialize in penetration testing. You can hire a security company that doesn't particularly know ServiceNow to do a pen test, which is fine. It'll check the box. But to really get value from it, my perspective and from what I've seen working is a white box, full review, letting someone review your code, dig into your customizations, see what was exposed maybe when you had companies come in and build things and ship, or if you have like an offshore distributed program where maybe you have multiple partners doing your development, which is a fine model, but you don't always know all of the stuff that's constantly being shipped. So a white box pen test, a security assessment, I highly recommend those for customers. And I'm seeing a demand for both those services. Fractional security engineering, that's that role I mentioned earlier where there is a growing need for this like fractional employee that really can specialize and answer the questions. Because you could read the docs are great. You could read the hardening docs and all of that, but to make decisions on those things and to interface with the security teams at your org is sometimes difficult. And having someone that can wear both hats and act as an in-between can really help. And they could translate the security stuff to the ServiceNow team, the ServiceNow stuff to the security team, and they can also be a doer and carry out those things. They can help you design. And then, like I said, Vault. Vault is a really up and coming product. I implemented it at a few customers, and there's a ton of interest in it specifically because of growing regulations around securing your data, column level encryption, data anonymization, data discovery, data classification. Those are all really important things. And I think there's a growing need for a specialist partner in that space, because you can implement it. You could just read the docs and check the boxes off, but designing it where you get the most value with, again, wearing that attacker and defender hat and also understanding ServiceNow is huge. I'll pause there. That was a lot of words. Sorry.
No, that's honestly great insight into all of this, especially the vault and the column encryption and all of that. These areas we focus on a lot as architects, and we often get a lot of questions about. So knowing that there are specialists who specialize in this is actually fantastic, because this is one of the areas that definitely needs a lot of different resources besides what ServiceNow offers.
That's great to hear. And I've heard from customers lately, it's kind of, this has all just been my observations, but now that I've started the company, I've had customers coming to me asking questions, and it's kind of validated that there is a gap in the space, and I'm really excited to be able to fill it. And beyond that, we're a build partner. So we're a technology partner. We're going to be building custom applications to sell in the store. Yep. And then in the future, potentially maybe supporting those apps could maybe support SecOps or platform security themselves. So I think there's a lot of room for advanced custom apps in the store, and even maybe being a third-party reviewer of the code for security apps. So for partners that maybe are putting things in the store in the future, that we might have an offering where we're reviewing their code from a security perspective. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that we have going, and there's some good demand for it. So I'm super excited.
Nice. And are or is your company's main focus ServiceNow, or are you expanding into other platforms as well?
No, we're all in on ServiceNow, and we're going to stay that way. I think that I think the need is there for a specialist in this space to only focus on ServiceNow, and I'm excited to fill that gap.
Absolutely. Now, one question that I have for you is that switching from being in healthcare into being in tech, what are the common skills that you see yourself reaching from your past to apply into your current position? And what are things or tips that you would have for people who are in different areas in healthcare that want to get into tech as well?
Definitely. So I would say a lot of my roles have been healthcare focused, like larger healthcare companies and hospital systems, and being able to go back and step into the shoes of a nurse and understand, like someone puts in a request and says, hey, we'd really like a custom application that can do a specific function that the nurses can input the data and it'll transform it and save it in a table. Just being able to put myself in the nurse's shoes has been super helpful, or to speak to a nurse or a physician at these places and just speak their language, and it one puts them at ease, and because they're not talking to someone that maybe doesn't understand what they're saying, but two, I can get better requirements from them, I feel like, because I understand like the healthcare and the medical terminology that they're used to using. As far as people pivoting into the space, I would say to landing your first job, just really leverage your domain expertise, because I must have put out, literally not joking, 200 applications before I got that Epic Analyst job, and I must have annoyed over 100 people on LinkedIn through messaging to try to land that first job. But once that first person got me in, I was so excited when they just responded, and then once I got the job, it wasn't hard to pivot around from there. But it's always landing that first role is a huge barrier, and I know the market's even harder now for entry level folks, but just being able to convey in some unique way that not only do you understand technology because you've self-studied and you're a self-starter, but you have this domain expertise where you can become that bridge and that middle ground to help communicate with people like clinicians or quality management staff. Just people that speak that healthcare language is huge.
Just wanted to ask you a follow-up question on the involvement of AI and security, and how do you see the future of AI and security, not necessarily on just ServiceNow, but overall the entire security domain?
Definitely. So starting with ServiceNow, I've seen a lot of customer demand, specifically in the SecOps space, with interest in building agents to maybe assist with things like triage and go beyond that original use case of just summarizing cases, right? Like to help it do an initial pass on phishing emails and things like that. So I think there's a lot of really cool potential there. And then overall, just using it as a first in the security space, I think there's a lot of opportunity to use it as like a first pass for things like when you're reviewing code, or to help back to the ethical hacking thing. I use AI now when I'm doing security research. I mean, you don't just tell it like, hey, hack this for me, right? That would be too easy. But I think there's a lot of really useful use cases for using it to for bypasses and things like that, because the more security researchers are using it to, say, bypass a WAF or use it to get around some kind of filter, the quicker we can get that into the remediators' hands to patch things before the bad guys find it. So that, if you're familiar with fuzzing, which is a concept in hacking, it's coming up with word lists for fuzzing and things like that, super helpful. So that's the main cases I've seen it used. And again, it's just growing exponentially. I feel like every time I turn around, there's a new use case.
Absolutely. And are there any exciting projects around AI and security that IntroLab is going to focus on?
I think our biggest focus is going to be with Vault, with all of the new Now Assist functionality that's being leveraged with Vault in the data privacy space. That's probably going to be our prime focus. And then in the store apps, I think there's going to be some opportunity for, once AI Agent Studio is in general release, for us to possibly build in that space.
Fantastic.
Excellent. And now, so you actually took both of my questions. That's why you are my co-host. This is why we made this podcast, because we just have that synergy. Now, I do have one last follow-up before we close here. I think in everyone's purview. I even talked to my parents about this too. AI, large language models. It's a very uncertain time that we're trying to understand. I would love to hear from your perspective, Nick. What's this? There's a new attack surface, I feel like, is going to emerge from the artificial intelligence as it's continued to proliferate in many use cases, whether those are helpful or harmful. Where do you see yourself investing more time around AI, and what would you recommend that a personal user do to make sure they're understanding, right, what AI is and what they can start to do to protect themselves and just understand some of those fundamentals? Would love to get your perspective, as you really have a very strong foundation in cybersecurity as well as the hacking and development of these different applications.
Definitely. I think so. I think it's really important for. Oh, sorry, we're gonna start this one over. All right, let me start over. I think it's super important for people to. I guess it depends on your level of skill, right? Like I talk to my mom about AI sometimes, and I find that she's sharing things on Facebook sometimes that are AI generated, and
Right.
it's just the general. If it's at a level of where you don't have much technology experience, a lot of it is just proactive education, because like people like my mom,
Yeah.
they don't even know deep fake technology exists, or that pictures, like
Right.
you can generate a real looking picture of Paul McCartney rescuing someone from a flood. Like there's like there's just a lack of understanding in that space, and understandably so, right? They're not keeping up on technology. So I think just the proactive education and just going out and just reading about what types of attacks exist are good for maybe folks that aren't super well versed in technology. But also, if you're in the weeds with technology, I think it's really good to mess with ChatGPT, right? Go out there, do some things, and verify what you're seeing, though, because vibe coding is awesome. Like, it's cool to see people doing stuff like that, but you really need to go in and verify the stuff it's giving you, because if you go in and look under the hood of how it's working, it's not a sentient being. It feels like one. It feels like you're talking to a super smart person, but sometimes you might get stuff that that maybe it works very functionally well, but there might be some security concerns with it. So it really helps to review things with a fine-tooth comb that you get back when you're going to be using them, especially in an enterprise setting. And also with the enterprise lens, again, not a paid ad, but AI Control Tower. I think that's a really good example, ServiceNow's AI Control Tower, of the governance that's needed in this space, because I think a lot of places are they're buying a lot of AI, but they're not maintaining an inventory of it, and they're not monitoring maybe all of the potential risks of using it. So I think something like AI Control Tower is going to be a game changer for enterprises to look at.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, and I appreciate you kind of bringing everything back into that perspective of, what's in your closet, especially what's in your inventory, is just as important. And so keeping those things, clean from a security hygiene perspective, but also being proactive as we talk through these different topics, technology, and bringing those together, right? It could be an easy button, but it's easy for a reason, right? And understanding why it's easy is half the battle, because there could be security implications, and some other privacy concerns. And so having that kind of tower to be more tactical versus chaos engineering, I think, is exactly what you've been doing. So, Nick, this has been such an incredibly insightful conversation. I just want to thank you again for taking us behind the scenes of your journey, from nursing, cybersecurity, hacking. You've been in the ServiceNow community as a very well organized and thoughtful leader, especially how you approach and build systems that truly matter. So I think, I really just want to tell our listeners again that this has been really insightful, and appreciate your blend of technical depth and your human-centered perspective. It definitely shows, and I really, really appreciate it. And before we sign off here, just wanted to make sure for our listeners, what's the best way for people to follow your work or just get in touch with you in case they have some additional follow-ups on security?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. LinkedIn's perfect. So I'm on LinkedIn often. I post often. So if you want to give me a follow and my company page and True Labs a follow on LinkedIn, maybe if Nasser could link that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Make sure of that. And I
Thanks so
just
much.
wanted to, yeah, of course. And I just wanted to echo Chris there. Thank you so much for being part of this. Honestly, it's a great honor to have this conversation with you and a truly inspiring story.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you both.
Absolutely, Nick. We'll talk soon. And thanks again for joining the Now at Night podcast. Take
Thanks.
care. Wow. Well, we had Nick Sessa grace us and really educate us around a lot of his endeavors, his inhibitions as well around security and AI. But I
Yeah,
think predominantly, I think the one thing that I took away from him is he just has a lot of passion, right? And he
Yes.
really likes to dig in and seize the opportunities that have been, presented to him and that he's created. Would love to get your thoughts, Nasser, on what you thought of Nick and just his overall demeanor and what he's delivered as a service, both on a personal and professional level.
absolutely. And honestly, that just reminds me of our overall idea of this podcast, right? Do something that you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life, right?
Yes.
Nick honestly just inspires me of how passionate he is about security, how he was in the healthcare system and yet found a way to bridge the gap between his expertise and what he actually wanted to do, which is security. I don't think that's a typical career path, and it's just inspiring to see people that have actually achieved it. And not only that, but also move on forward where they use that to kind of be more empathetic with people who are in their previous shoes, if I may say, who can
Yeah.
basically help them solve their problems. So, a truly inspiring story. Honestly, another guest in our Hall of Fame. That was just a fantastic episode.
Yeah, I agree somewhat. I think you hit the nail on the head there, especially in leading with empathy, right? And putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. We don't do it enough. I think we think about what's the next thing I have to do, right? The check box, right? Filling out the blank. But I think when we think about all of these different, ways that we understand and share not just our feelings, but also how we collaborate with other team members, I think leading with empathy is such an important, discipline that we should all instill in ourselves, and just being aware that others are also trying to do the impossible, right? We're all
Absolutely.
trying to figure out how to start companies and how to figure out how we can, you know, figure out all these different areas in our lives that might be challenging for us. So, I think to your point, Nick was really inspiring that he, even when he started as a nurse, right, he had a completely different trajectory in his career, starting as a nurse practitioner, but using that experience, using
Mhm.
that humanistic approach, right, leading with that empathy, he was able to exercise all of those skills in technology and use
Absolutely.
it for the good of educating someone and really allowing them to inspire themselves into other areas that they might have been afraid of before.
Absolutely.
So yeah, wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, and honestly, that just shows a lot about him as an individual. A lot of people would
Hmm.
get off once they are in a specific career path that they see that there's something else that they want to do, and then they basically kind of get scared away from moving into their passion. But that was not the case for Nick. Nick saw an opportunity. Nick heard about ServiceNow from a colleague. Nick jumped on the opportunity as soon as he saw it, and that led Nick to honestly be an expert in our security practice and led him to starting his own business. So, wow, truly inspiring story.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think with that, we can closing, it's just a constant reminder to continuously leading through empathy through every conversation, interaction, and discussion you're having,
Absolutely.
whether that's through personal growth, or especially when you're looking at career development, reaching out to your peers and taking that initiative, right, to take that first step. If something is interesting to you and you want to learn more,
Go
just
for it.
ask,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Ask, knock on that door, kick it down, break it, whatever you have to do, right? You have every tool in the toolbox out there in this technology industry we live in. But from a personal level, I think we just need to ask the simple questions, create those experiences, and I think that will invoke a lot of more inspirational discussions we have on this podcast. So, thank you again, Nasser, and thanks again, Nick, for joining us here on our journey at the Now at Night podcast. And again, if we'll look forward to our next update with Nick and many others as we continue this journey here on the podcast. Again, thank you so much to our Now listeners, and really looking forward to our next discussions.
Same here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Nick. And we look forward to seeing you next time.